Everybody, please try and mute your phones. Everybody should be on mute when Ira's talking so we can hear him, please.
Otherwise, there's a lot of feedback.
Yeah.
I wanna,
Everybody, please put your phones.
can you guys
Peter,
hear
can you
us?
put the phone on mute?
Start video.
Yeah.
Oh, if we do that, we can't do it.
I think he's already.
Can everybody please put their phones on mute as they come in so we can listen to Ira? Take your phones off mute when you need to speak.
Okay, so you see the pictures now? I'm not sure they see the pictures. 1 second.
No,
You don't see the pictures. 1 second, 1 second. Okay, now you see it, right? It's almost finished.
Oh, that's you and Rita. Oh my God.
It's Rita, yeah, and in the background,
Black header.
that's in our kitchen. Okay, and the last picture is of their tombstones. And I just want to tell it, if you didn't hear the story, so I'll tell it. If you heard it, I'll tell it again. When he passed away, he was visiting our house. He was visiting us for Shabbat. And he used to go to shul in the morning. He never missed anything, you know. If he was almost 92, you know, I would have forgiven him. But he always went, and he would go ahead of me with Danielle. Danielle was 10 years old.
Jordan, come here.
Would walk with him to shul. And then I would follow a few minutes later and catch up with him. And after a few minutes, Danielle came back crying, and
Leaving. Oh, I dropped.
and he
Avi,
said,
put your phone on mute.
he said,
Okay. Wait, George.
he said, Zeta fell. So I ran out downstairs,
Jordan.
he had collapsed, whatever. And someone had called for an ambulance. And I went with him to the hospital in the ambulance, and I didn't know exactly what was going on. You know, I didn't know what the situation was. Came to the hospital, emergency room, and they, you know, they checked him out, and they said, look, he had a heart attack, very bad, you know, a very massive heart attack. And he won't survive this. He won't survive. And he passed away, you know, a little while later. And that was at just the days before the outbreak of the Gulf War. And Pearl and Irv and Rita came and they stayed with us. And we were subject to, after a few days, to, Rita was sleeping in the apartment of the neighbors upstairs. In the middle of the night, she says, I hear a siren. I said, no, there's no siren. So we turned on the radio, and sure enough, there had been, the missiles started flying that was like Thursday night. That's, you know, so anyway, now that's the end of the presentation. And if anyone I wants to talk about him, please do now. Now's the chance, okay? Please say something.
Story time.
Story time.
You know, I will tell you that all of you who know me and know my history know that I was in a lot of trouble when I was younger.
Who are you?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Who are you?
yeah.
Zev Greenfield, Rita's son. So I was in a lot of trouble when I was younger. And, you know, my memory of Zeta growing up is that he was, as Iris said, always held our hands. He was like, the grandchildren were the most important thing. You know, I remember stories of people wanting to shush us in shul, and Zeta would have fights with them about if there aren't children, if you don't hear children playing and screaming in the shul's dying. So he really loved children. But I just want to say something that, there was a lot of trouble in my family, and Zeta was always supportive, always told my mother and everybody never to give up on me. And I mean, there's a story about me they wanted me to have 2 bar mitzvahs. All right. Because my father wouldn't let my father wanted me to have a bar mitzvah, and my mother and my grandfather wanted me to have bar mitzvah, but I had to have 2. So I never showed up for either one. But later in life, I have the sweetest memory. I was visiting, Zeta helped get me into Morristown to Lubavitch yeshiva there when I was trying to get out of trouble and trying to get off of whatever I was on at the time. And I went to visit, I guess he was living with Sarah at the time, in Elizabeth. And I went to visit, and we walked to shul, and we practiced the Aliyah prayers all the way to shul. And secretly, he organized for me to get the Kohen Aliyah. And between me and him, I think we were the only ones that knew it was my bar mitzvah. And to this day, it still moves me to talk about it. So I'm very grateful that he was in my life.
Okay, so he used to talk about his, he was imprisoned in Poland. Do you remember that story? Do you remember the story that he was imprisoned?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so I'll just tell it quickly.
That's the part about the bed that would,
Pickpocketing.
it was the jailers would push a button, the bed would fold under the floor.
He was draft dodging, it was really bad thing to go to the army in Poland, especially for Jews who they were not nice to the people in the 1920s. And he said he was sleeping in different places every night just to avoid whoever was looking for him. And then he heard that there was like a pardon if you came to, to volunteer, so they would pardon you for whatever you didn't show up. So he went. And he was drafted, and it was like he was terrible. It was very bad for him, and he wanted to get out. So he happened to meet up with our grandmother and Sheva one day, who brought him a letter from a friend who had come on Aliyah to tell him how to get out of Poland to get to Palestine at that time. And someone suspected him of being a communist, where they met, and they arrested him. And they took him to prison, and he was in Warsaw in the prison, in the Pawiak. We visited there. The Pawiak was a prison where in each and every period, the enemies of the powers that be were put in this terrible prison. He was there for a few months. He spent a few months in prison. They suspected him of being a communist. And he eventually,
I can't hear everything you say.
he got out. And that was a story that he always used to tell, especially at the Seder on Pesach. He repeated his story of how he was attained his freedom. He used to come all the time. He would come to do homework with us almost every day. And I say, I don't know. I could never do homework with my grandchildren. It's like,
Ira, I remember something about him being in prison, and they, in order to prove it, he had somebody told him to say he was a pickpocket, not a communist.
Oh, no, just
they taught him
that there was somebody with him, and they were separating the thieves from the political prisoners. And whoever it was told him, someone who we knew was with him, he says, go on the side of the political prisoners. They get treated better than the pickpockets, than the thieves. And that's what he did. But yeah.
There was actually another part to that story, because the political prisoners were being set up for an exchange with the Soviets for Polish prisoners of war, because remember, Poland and the Soviet Union had actually been in battles through the 1920s. And they said you must learn to be a criminal, a pickpocket, because if they think that you're a political prisoner, they're going to send you with us to the
Okay,
Soviet
I
Union.
remember the exact details.
Right, and we want to
That's
go
what-
to the
that's what I
Soviet
remember.
Union and be part of the revolution. But the Soviets there will think you're a spy because you're clearly not a communist. Lisa, can you put your thing on mute?
Mute.
Anyway, when he came to the States, he immediately went to request American citizenship. And it was before a judge at that time. It was appeared before a judge. And the judge said to him, well, maybe you want to stay here a while, see how it is. Maybe you want to go back. So he said, oh, no, I'm not going back there. That's, every week on Shabbat, we were at their house for lunch. And, I just thinking about it, it's like, wow, that was like something, it was a tremendous effort to do that stuff. And I always say, besides the spiritual part of it, one of the things that he always brought us, what he always got, was that he had like a butcher shop in his basement. And he always used to, when he came from the slaughterhouse, he would get, for cost or whatever they gave it to the workers, he would get all kinds of meat that he brought home, and he made it kosher, and he would cut it up and put it in his freezer for the whole family. That was like, it was like, you remember that? Everybody remembers that?
I remember the freezers in the basement because we used to
The
play in them.
basement.
So
We were in the basement.
when I was very young, I went to the slaughterhouse with Uncle Moshe and Murray, and it was an eye-opening experience. They were shecheting cattle, and then I remember at another time, because where they lived on Seymour Avenue, we lived 2 houses away. The owner of the house, the Gendel family, didn't want him shecheting in the basement, so he came to our house to use the basement to shechet chickens. And I remember he shecheted a chicken, and the chicken was running around without a head, and I never forgot that. It was like,
okay, so he had a story. It was a story, but he had a neighbor who was from, I don't know, he was from Hungary or something like that. And this guy loved, in Hungary, he always had pigeons, 8 pigeons, doves or whatever you call them, pigeons. And he would ask him, he would bring him the pigeons and to shecht it for him. So he was going out in the backyard. This is when they lived in Elizabeth already. So he was going out in the backyard to shecht the pigeons. So our grandmother said, what? No way, you can't do that. You can't do it in the backyard. What will the neighbors say? So she sent him someplace else, hidden away where it shouldn't be seen. But I also was a number of times I was in the slaughterhouse, and I might have been 10 years old, and and it was pretty. It was hard. What can I tell you?
I
On the one
remember
hand, it was
him.
very interesting that he was a shochet. On the other hand, he loved animals. He really loved animals.
He loved animals so much that he made sure that he only fed on our dog kosher meat. He'd bring back meat for the dogs, kosher it in the basement, in the big tubs, and then feed it to the animals. He felt that the animals deserved the same treatment as adults. Lisa, can you put yourself on mute?
Yeah, I wanted to say something. That's why I opened it. I wanted to say something. That's why I opened it. Can I say something?
Sure.
I'm sure everyone remembers the rings from the cows, from the whatever that we used even as jewelry
Yeah,
Rita used to wear them all the time.
It's, the
I
bulls.
I have a whole box of them. I'll show you.
Rita would wear them on her wrists all the
Right,
time.
your mother, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I want to say something else on a different subject.
Wait, one second. Wait, the rings are coming here. We have a
They
whole
have the rings.
box of the rings here, which are great. Go ahead, Lisa.
I can't see them. Right. The rings from the cow, right? They were from the nose?
Yeah.
Right, okay. All right, can we change the topic a little bit?
Yeah.
I just want everyone to know, talking about the Shabbos table and that we went there every week. And I remember that after the 6-Day War, we sang Yerushalayim Shel Zahav after the benching. There were stencil sheets and everybody sang Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. And last year, I was before Tu B'Shvat at a song night of the songs of Nomi Shemer, who wrote that song, and her daughter was there. And they talked about the songs and what was behind the songs. And then people started going over to the daughter and telling her how they remember the first time they ever heard her mother's song. People who were even neighbors, and the first time they remembered her practicing the song. And then after the liberation of Yerushalayim, they remember how the song filled the streets. And I was observing all this, and I was thinking to myself, am I going to tell her? So I went over to her and I told her that at my Zayda's Shabbos table, we sang Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. I thought it was very important. It was something that she should know. And she said to me, wow, Yerushalayim Shel Zahav became part of your Shabbat. That's the story.
Yeah.
And on that note, I'll remind everyone how our grandparents' home was a real hub for the family, at least when I was growing up. And those years in the mid-60s and early 70s. And we and the Schwartzes together, we ate Shabbat meals with them regularly. And at some stage, my brother, Ira, would stay over at Shabbat with them because I usually have the company overnight already. And then I got a little bit older and I joined him. And I remember how her grandmother would make the special things that we liked. And every Shabbat night, I had her homemade hamburgers with mashed potatoes. And at Shabbat lunch, we had different types of family.
And if you remember, they had the soup after the main course. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that. But I remember some
Supposedly,
of the other delicacies were from the things that my grandfather would bring home. Was there bring home the pickled tongue and the what do they call it? The shortbread.
Sweet bread.
And there was also the latkes made from grains that I never ate.
Yeah.
It was Haskell's favorite.
And the kishka that was basically chicken skin that was sewn and
No, that's a helzo. That's a helzo.
That was what they called it, but it was really kishka.
Oh, kishka, right.
It was filled with the kishka, whatever.
Right.
And all kinds of other grievance, whatever it was. The chicken
Now-
fat.
Nowadays, you can buy it all made, but Papa made it from scratch.
But it
Yeah,
doesn't
right.
compare. It doesn't compare.
Compares, nothing compares. It's the tender loving care that makes a big difference. And we remember that also our cousins and the Newmans lived nearby, and also on Shabbat many times during the afternoon after lunch, that Morris and Irving would come with Amina and Ruth and others would come by. And it was like a real exciting time that kept the family glued together. And I think if we have still to this day, after so many years that they are gone, we have this feeling of family. Some we see more often, some less often. And this is amazing technology, allows us to actually second best to really being there, to see you all together today. And we know there are others who either we didn't get contact or they weren't able to make it, but we're so happy that to have this opportunity. And it's almost like old times.
Arnold, talking about the meals, one of the things that he always did was that he would go around the table making sure that everybody ate everything. You know, he said, you didn't eat this and you didn't eat that and you didn't eat this and this, that. And Baba, she was like, you know, she put the things on it, Adam. She always, you know, she always said what she thought. And she didn't like it that he was, you know, pushing people to eat the stuff. She didn't like it. So she said one time, I remember her saying, she said, you know, I'm saying it now in a very, no, not being crude, the opposite, being gentle here. She used to say, you know what? If he physically could, he would go around the table and nurse everyone.
You can say what on a more serious note, I was thinking as we're all sitting here and being together, that particularly when Baba and Zeta left, and I know they left Poland a few months apart, it was a very courageous thing to do, even though life was, you know, terrible for the Jews. But for Zeta, he never saw his family again. It wasn't, as we mentioned earlier, 26 years later, when Sheva and her family came to the United States, his father and his sister, like you said before, passed away before the war, and the rest of the family was killed during the war. So the courage that it took to leave and never see his family again, you know, is just amazing to me. And if they hadn't done that, then we might not all be here today. You know, that they had the courage to leave and go to America. The other thing that I was thinking of that was, you know, one of his major characteristics and traits was his, you know, fierce determination to live a life dedicated to Torah, mitzvot, and masim tovim. You know, I mean, we were just talking about his becoming a sheikhet, and why did he become a sheikhet? So that he could, you know, observe Shabbat and Chagim, because in those days, in the 20s and 30s, so many people, so many Jews came to America and they couldn't find work where they could be Shomer Shabbat. And yes, is wanting to help us with our homework all the time. And even when he went to Israel, you showed that picture of his spending all his time either learning or helping other people, doing errands for other people, feeding them, taking them to the hospital. You know, so many, and this was he was a role model for all of us. And there was one anecdote that I remembered my mother saying, you know, growing up during the Depression, I'm sure they didn't live, you know, very well on a sheikhet's salary, but Zeta would always say they were rich. And my mother was a kid, but she understood they weren't rich. You know, they didn't live like that, but Zeta insisted, you know, they were healthy, they had enough food, they were together, they were rich. Those were the values that he instilled and bestowed on his family. So those were some of the things that I was thinking of earlier when you asked us to speak.
Judy, on that note, I want to tell a little story. He used to work for Russo. Do you remember Russo? Who remembers Russo?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
David
Now,
had a job. He used to wash feet. I would go with him sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went with him. One of the times I was in the car with him with Jimmy Russo, the boss's son. And these guys, they all spoke. They were Italian. They all spoke. They had like this voice, like they spoke like the Godfather, like Marlon Brando kind of thing, That's it. Anyway, so one day it was before the elections, and he says to him, Rabbi, who are you going to vote for? He said, and he didn't ask, he didn't who he was going to vote for. He says, of course I'm going to vote for the Democrats. She says, why are you going to vote for the Democrats? So he says, because the Democrats are for the poor people. So he was never the poor. He wasn't the poor people. He was he saw himself as being like a simple person, like, whatever. He wasn't a Republican, believe me that, but he that was his thing. He said that, we used to take, I think that from the when he was worked in a chicken market, he used to take home the reject chickens and put them on the doorstep of people who were out of work. That's that's one of the things that he did.
I was thinking, just I was remembering as you're talking about this, that he worked in the slaughterhouses until he was 75. And, I've heard two stories why he worked until that point, didn't retire earlier. One is that, he came into the United States on a false immigration visa from I think Lithuania, which said he was basically 10 years younger than what he was. So he was always afraid that U.S. Social Security would find out, or immigration would find out and deport him. But the other aspect that part of the story which I remember is that the butchers union that he was part of, was very corrupt. And at one point, the treasurer of the union ran away and stole all the money from the union. So all the union members had to actually work longer paying
Their pension money.
in order to recoup it. So
The pension fund went broke. That's
right. So those two reasons he had to keep on working much longer than normal. But also, for the end of his life, the end of his working life, he was offered a job because they were closing down a lot of the slaughterhouses in New Jersey, and they were opening up all these big mega slaughterhouses in Iowa, like Dubuque, Iowa. And he was offered the job to go out to transfer out to Iowa as a shochet. And our grandmother said over her dead body, she wasn't moving to Iowa. And, that's finally, I think, when he retired.
Yeah, no, his slaughterhouse closed down for a while because of the economic problems that they had. They were bringing in meat from the West, and that's where yeah.
Another thing about slaughtering, I remember going with Zeta on Saturday night to slaughterhouse. And I think this one time you came along, Ira.
Yeah.
You were pretty young. And not that I was old. And he did his slaughtering, and then he has to put the plumbers, the wires through the tongues.
Yeah.
Heads, and so I started doing it. You didn't want to have anything to do with that at that point.
Yeah.
David, every Friday, every Motzei Shabbat, Saturday night, He would gather whatever kids were in the house for Shabbat, and we'd all sit around the kitchen table, stringing the wires with the cardboard tags.
I remember that.
And stamping them. And then some of us would go off to the slaughterhouses. I mean, I did too, but yes.
I remember sweeping the blood and picking up the cattle heads too and putting them in the.
Oh, yes, that actually has helped me in my work all these years.
Yeah, you had to grab the tongue to put the wire in it, right?
Right, and you had to pick it, and my hands were too small. I had to put them in the eyes and pick them up.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yes, exactly. Yes. The older you got, I mean, the younger ones, remember when I was young, my job was to pick up the feet and sweep the blood. As I got a little bit older, yes, I could pick up the heads of the cows finally by sticking my fingers in the eyes and then, hooking the heads up on big metal hooks.
Yeah.
Nobody's vegetarian.
Another thing that from the Shabbos table, going back to the singing, Seda, I think, always encouraged us to sing Shmirot at the Shabbos table. He wasn't a singer, but he liked it, and I think it taught us all something, being able to sing the Shmirot.
So he liked things that people could do that he didn't do. He never, never was a chazan and shul, never did it. But he always sent me, when I would come, he said, "Okay, you go, because he would never do it. He considered himself to be like physically weak. He didn't think he was strong. His voice is not strong enough. Things like that. But he very much encouraged his grandchildren to do that, including singing. He wasn't a singer at all. But
also, I remember my mother asking him many years ago that why, he had smicha already from Poland. Why did he try to become a pulpit rabbi and not go to the slaughterhouses? And he said, and I remember him saying to her, he never wanted to sell his soul to the community. He didn't want to be beholden to a community. He wanted to serve the community. But a pulpit rabbi is a political personality, and he never wanted that for his, in his life.
Well, he definitely enjoyed studying Torah and teaching Torah. And I remember that he would say that he felt that there are many things that he knew that the rabbis didn't know. But he was a very modest man. He had his group that would meet with him in the shul, and they would learn the Gemara, they learned the Midrash, and that was what was important to him. And he had his livelihood. And like Julie said, he wasn't looking for riches. He was looking for as a modest person to be able to provide for his family and to be able to continue with the traditions and hopefully make an impression on the next generation to continue with the traditions.
Well, he certainly made an impression on the next generation.
Yeah.
About 10 years ago, or a little more, and you gave me the information, Ira. One of my grandsons had an assignment where everyone in the class had to speak about one of the famous rabbis, and he said he heard we had a rabbi in the family, so he spoke about Zeta. Ira provided me information on his early education. And he gave out hard pieces of sugar, like Zeta used to have his tea with, to the class.
Right. He didn't put sugar in the tea, put this sugar cubes in his mouth and sucked it through the tea. Yeah. That saved sugar. Sugar was probably very expensive when he was a kid.
Right.
Not good for your teeth, but
They
I would say
probably
it's
didn't
also
have that many dentists in Poland.
it's also how we all learn to drink very hot tea, because he would serve it in glasses with a little spoon, and you had to learn how to balance the tea, the top of the tea glass with your fingers and still drink.
Yeah, I asked him once, why does he drink tea when it's 90 degrees outside? So he says, it's because after he finishes the tea, he feels cooler. Okay, so we're about to run out of time. I think we should, keep together. Yeah, well, every once in a while, we should do this again. And
We're not gonna wait 30 years. We won't wait 30 years.
And we don't have to, it doesn't have to be a huge, we could just like say hi too.
okay, did you see Benny is here? Benny, I think.
I did.
Hi,
Hi all. I want to say something, if I still got some time, Abba.
Yeah.
I listened to you all, and I think I knew Zaidi Jet for 3 years, and actually my memories is very small of him, but I remember. 1 second. I remember that always when our engagement was around food, a cup of tea or some pretzel or something like that. And I think to see you all together around talking on Zayde like this, it's really special because not many cousins feel, I don't know, together or connect as you, as your generation. And I think we should thank him all for this, I don't know, this gift.
You're right, absolutely.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Benny.
So.
I just want to say it's great to see all my cousins who I don't get to see ever, and say hello to everybody.
Okay, but you have to come to visit us when it's all over. When this
We keep saying next year in Jerusalem,
You'll get us a vaccine.
and hopefully we're going to make it one of these years.
Yeah.
Okay, we're looking forward to it. I think
That's
next
it.
year we're gonna
Thank
we'll
you,
talk about-
Ira.
Wish everybody well.
Thank you so much for putting this together, for the idea and the time to make the presentation with all the pictures and your research, and, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to me. I don't get audiences very often.
Your voice comes back.
Next time we can reminisce about the summers in Bradley Beach,
Ah.
Yes.
Rosenberg.
Charlie taking us, with Chuck taking us scuba diving.
I didn't even know that.
You
Well,
should
we
know
watched him scuba dive.
that Zeta was a swimmer. He used to, he swam very well. He did. He swam. I was with him at the beach, and he dived into the water like a fish, just like a fish, really.
I mean, that's the beauty. We did things as a family. I mean, that's really. We live so far apart.
Down less than a
There's-
minute.
There's also lots of memories of us all gathering in Bradley Park, in Asbury Park.
Asbury Park.
Right, to go to the beach together and stay in. We'd all sleep in one large room together with our grandparents.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna get cut off in a second.
Okay, we're gonna be cut off soon.
Love you all.
Okay.
Be well, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
See everybody.
Careful.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Keep safe.
Bye.